House in Baltimore, ready for the NHL and the NBA playoffs, and of course tons of draft with the Ravens 16 on the clock 3 weeks from now. But it is baseball season, and the Orioles open the home schedule for the Boston Red Sox up at Fenway Park. Not sure how many guys they're going to get onto the field. Lots of flu. They had bereavement issues. The Red Sox have been a mess. This guy has been around. He remembers when the Red Sox were a real mess back before they were winning championships. He's been doing it for 35 years now up in Boston. I don't think he survived it all up there. Long-time anchor WCVB, Channel 5 in Boston. We welcome Mike Lynch back onto the program. You can follow his journey at Lynchy CVB, out on Twitter. What's up with those Red Sox, man? Tough luck losers on Monday. It's been a kind of a choppy start to their season with a lot of bad luck, right?
Yeah, well, Chris Sale, his first start at Fenway, they went 12 innings with the Pirates, and it was 0-0 when he came out of the game after 7 innings. And they went 12 innings, and then on Monday against Verlander, great showdown with two of the best in the baseball, and the Red Sox only get him, as a team, they get 1 run. So in his 2 outings, the Red Sox, allegedly explosive offense, has only put 1 run on the board for him.
Well, and I guess that's to be expected when a lot of the guys, the main guys, aren't in the lineup. I know, Bradley's been out, but more than that, the flu epidemic that, apparently started down in Florida has sort of chased them all over the place, including here to Annapolis last week in that crazy preseason game they played, right?
Yeah, it was. It started with Mitch Moreland. He had it when they headed north. Well, he had it in Fort Myers, and then he brought it up to Annapolis, and when they played the Nationals, and then it sort of just spread, and almost like one by one. And it's tough. These guys are, airplanes are probably the biggest contaminated area to have germs spread, as we all know. And it happens a lot in professional teams. So, they're in locker rooms, they're in meetings, and I don't know, they do their laundry together. They put it all together. I'm not a doctor, but you spend a lot of time with someone who's sick, pretty good chance you're going to catch it.
Well, and it's amazing that it doesn't happen more often, right? I mean, when it happens, as reporters, we report on it. But when one person goes down with the flu, it's a mess. But when you got half your roster having that, I remember there's a mumps epidemic a couple of years ago in the NHL as well. Yeah. But I am amazed that it doesn't wipe out teams a little bit more frequently than it does at the professional level.
Yeah, well, you see it happen in families, and you see it happen in workplace. If you talk to somebody that works in an office, they said, everybody in my office is sick.
Sure.
And so, why not a professional team? And usually these guys, they get great treatment. I mean, they get doctors that can hand them Z-Packs right away and any antibiotics. And so, I would think for these guys to have to sit out a game or 2 or 3, they got to be hit pretty hard by the flu bug.
Well, when the lead story on the AP on our website at WNST.net is Red Sox fumigate clubhouse at Fenway Park, I mean, literally fumigating the clubhouse. And the Orioles are coming into a clubhouse, and nobody wants to get this, and I'm sure that's a Major League Baseball mandate, right?
Yeah, it is. Hey, remember in the National Hockey League, you had that rash going around. They were doing everything. They were boiling equipment and doing everything they could to get rid of that rash. And it's the same thing with the flu. You just it's airborne, and you do everything you can to get rid of it.
Did you like the offseason? I mean, the deal for Sale. I mean, obviously, anytime you're dealing with prospects, that's something that's unheard of in the Oriole organization because we don't have those kinds of prospects. I mean, not a lot of organizations had the powder in the keg to go get Chris Sale, right?
Yeah, the Red Sox have a pretty good farm system, and they've got a pretty good reserve stashed away in order to make deals like this. And so I think everybody was really happy. They won it in 2013, but that was surrounded by 2 last-place finishes, and they did make the playoffs last year, but they were swept away by a pretty good Cleveland team. We, at the time, everyone in Boston was pretty surprised, but then when we saw what Cleveland did to go, to extra innings in Game 7 against the mighty Cubs, and with a pretty much depleted lineup, that Indian team was pretty good. But there's no patience in Boston for rebuilding. There's no such thing as a bridge year. It's every year. It's win it now, and that's been the mentality. And they've signed, they've signed a lot of big contracts over the past few years. Hanley Ramirez, Pablo Sandoval. They pick up Sale. They got him on the contract in 2019 at $12 million a year, which allegedly is a bargain. But they'll load it up, and they get arguably the best defensive outfield they have ever had in a Red Sox uniform.
It is fascinating the year that Ortiz finally leaves, and not leaving, in disgrace, hitting 211 and being a shadow of his former self. I mean, he appointed himself incredibly nice. I mean, there won't be many guys in the history of Major League Baseball that go out with that kind of offensive year that he went out with last year. And then there's the whole notion of replacing him, not only in the lineup with the clutch hitting, but the leadership part of that, and knowing, how the game is played and the way the game is played in Boston. I always saw him from the outside as sort of the ultimate leader for that organization, and that's not a tough place to play.
And he also was the leader in the city. A lot of young kids looked up to him. A lot of Hispanic people obviously looked up to him. And he was, every time he turned around, he'd be at some charity event. And, and then you remember, of course, in the marathon bombings when they came back, and usually at home the uniforms read Red Sox across the front, and it's Boston. And he picked up the microphone, went out in the field, and he dropped an F-bomb. He said, "This is our blank city." And right then and there, he became one of us forever. And we didn't see him in spring training. We haven't seen him at Fenway. We thought we might see him on opening day, throw out the first pitch, but that went to Tom Brady. So they're going to retire his uniform on June 23rd, and this summer. But the guy who is sort of assuming this role, which surprised me, was Hanley Ramirez. He was given Ortiz's 2 lockers in spring training in Fort Myers. He far more outgoing than he has been. He was here 2 years ago, and was kind of petulant, kind of pouty, kind of moody. Didn't have a good year. Last year he had a great year for home runs and RBIs, and this year he's a completely different guy. And he says, I want to be that leader. I want to be the guy like David Ortiz. I am assuming the role. So, I mean, leaders, aren't given you have to actually earn it. But so far he's been the guy that a lot of young guys are looking up to.
Not easy being Mitch Moreland, I would think, at this point, right?
No, not at all. No, it's kind of Moreland's going to play first base against right-handed hitters, and Hanley's going to play first base when the lefties come in, and there'll be another DH. But they get a lot of depth. The club is loaded, and anything less than making the playoffs and the goal is a World Series all the time. So making the playoffs is just one small step.
He is Lynchy, WCVB, up in Boston at Channel 5. He is Mike Lynch, longtime anchor up there in New England, 35 years. So, you're a young old-timer like myself. I'm only celebrating 25, Mike, but I remember the summer of 1975 pretty well, quite frankly, and that the summer of Fred Lynn and Jim Rice and, Burleson coming up and Dewey Evans in his prime and Tiant and all that stuff. But the memories of Fred Lynn and what he was supposed to be, what he was going to be, he was going directly to the Hall of Fame, all of that stuff, and replacing Yaz and all that. Didn't work out. And, I see all of this pressure on Benintendi, but I think there's pressure on all the Bs, right? Whether it's Bradley and Bogarts and Betts and all these young players. But Benintendi's the flavor of the month. And for any of us who ever saw Fred Lynn swing, it is kind of uncanny, isn't it?
It is. And that's what on opening day, he had a 3-run homer against the Pirates, and it was a Fred Lynn-like swing. And immediately everyone's going, okay, 22 years old, Fred Lynn was just out of Southern Cal when he came up and swung the same way and won the Rookie of the Year and the MVP in the same year. And then here we've got the reincarnation of Fred Lynn in Benintendi. It's a lot of pressure to put on a guy. But he's the real deal. He is really good to watch, and he's a pretty good kid, too.
Well, and apparently taking Boston by storm from a popularity standpoint. I mean, for this many young players, I mean, hard to say who is really the crowd favored. Or, as we talked about Lynn and Rice and those guys, we always thought Lynn was going to wind up being the better player. Rice wound up being the better player. Amongst this group of players, it's kind of hard to project, but I guess most of the smart money's on Betts, right? To be the guy who will get a second contract and hang out and get his $250 or $300 million right there in Boston, right?
Well, that's the plan. I know they would love to lock him in, and they'd love to lock all those guys in for long term. But in baseball, it's 6 years before you become a free agent, and I think it's 3 years before you go to salary arbitration. And the Sox, they're not afraid to spend money because they do make a lot of money. And if they keep these 3 guys together, this is we're thinking back. I was talking to Peter Gammons in spring training. I said, "Is this the best defensive outfield?" And he said, "Yeah, I think it is." He said, "It's hard. When you had Yaz Evans and Rice was the DH, and Yaz was the left fielder, and Lynn was the center fielder. He said one year they were really, really good. I want to say he said 76, maybe it was 75, but these guys can go get it. I mean, they turn triples into outs, and there's an old saying, where triples go to die is usually in Jackie Bradley's glove.
Well, in the case of the Orioles, we're waiting on Chris Tillman, and he's at the top of our rotation, and there's no word as to when he's going to come back. But we didn't spend, a couple $100 million like the David Price situation. It is fascinating that they can spend all of this money and have Ramirez be in a funk one year, the Panda to disappear the next year, David Price, well, maybe he'll be back Memorial Day or whatever, and they sort of forge ahead. But the loss of David Price is a big factor for me in thinking that they're going to win 102 games and just make this thing look easy this year.
Well, I agree. And one thing, Price won 17 games last year, and he eats up innings. I mean, he pitches over 200 innings. I think he had that close to, or one of them had 197. Anyway, he eats up innings. That's the big thing for him, and he's a gamer, and he wants the ball in his hands. Now, granted, he's never won a postseason game, which is becoming a little bit of an issue. And Porcello has never won a postseason game, and Sale has never been in a postseason game. So before the season started, all the people, the doomsday people, were all pointing out those three facts to everybody. But but Price is a guy, you got to have him in there every fifth day. I mean, and he keeps you in some games too.
Well, the other part of that is when Andy McPhail was here, he was saying, well, we're going to grow the arms and buy the bats. The Red Sox have done it the exact opposite, right? I mean, whether it's even dealing off of Moncada, there has been a real propensity to say we're going to go pluck pitchers from the marketplace, whether it's Porcello or Price or Sale, that's the way the Red Sox are going to do business pitching-wise.
Yeah, well, they don't like to sign pitchers over 30 for long-term contracts, and that's why they let John Lester go to the Cubs. And then they turn around and they sign Price, who this contract will run well through his 30th birthday and beyond. But they just, Dombrowski was familiar with him, obviously from his time with him in Detroit. And when he said, "I think I can go get David Price," John Henry said, "I know what my feeling is, but I'm gonna make an exception this time. Go get him." So that's Dombrowski went after him and he got him.
Well, they want to win up there, and I guess the bar is set so incredibly high throughout the market. I mean, you remember back in the days when there weren't a lot of expectations outside of the Celtics and once in a while the Bruins. I mean, the Patriots stunk forever. The Red Sox stunk forever. And now, you got to push David Ortiz out the back door for Tom Brady to throw out the first pitch in Red Sox games. It is, it's uncanny what's gone on in Foxborough, but even more so, coming back from 28-3, we've never seen that. But this offseason for the Patriots has been really incredible, and now the Richard Sherman stuff and the Malcolm Butler stuff and picking up Stephon Gilmore, it's been an incredible offseason for the Patriots. That usually doesn't happen when you finish first.
No, it doesn't. But everybody wants to win a Super Bowl or play in a Super Bowl, and the best place for that. The best odds of that happening are in New England. I mean, they're going to the. I'll tell you right now. Matter of fact, barring Tom Brady season-ending injury, they're going back to the Super Bowl next year. There's nobody in the AFC that can beat them. Nobody.
Well, that's why we draft him up in a couple of weeks here, Lynchy. I mean, I hear the bravado, and we all hate it here, but I mean, I can't argue with it, and I can't go to Vegas and argue with it, because if you went to Vegas, they would say the same thing, right?
Yeah, they would. I see no. I mean, Brady is as good as he's ever been. He says he feels better than he did when he was 25 years old. He's going to be 40 on August 3rd. And they made themselves a better football team. I mean, they lost Logan Ryan at corner. They signed Stephon Gilmore. They may have the Richard Sherman. They've got Dante Hightower. They just locked him up. Malcolm Butler. Hopefully he decides he wants to stay around. And they picked up this kid Burkhead, pretty good versatile running back out of Cincinnati, who can do a lot of things. And they won it without Gronkowski last year. And Gronkowski's going to be back.
Lynchy, I'm going to ask you the most important. What are they doing to cheat these days? I mean, what are we going to find out about 5 years from now that they're cheating in 2017? Because that really is a legitimate question for anybody outside of New England, I think, right?
Sure it is. They're hated outside of New England, and we that's how we always felt about the Yankees when I was growing up, when I was in college. The Yankees have to be the only reason the Yankees are any good is because they buy championships. They can't win them; they got to buy them. And now with the Patriots, they can't win them unless they're cheating. So trust me, if Tom Brady was throwing watermelons in that AFC Championship game against the Colts a few years ago, they still would have won by 40 points.
Well, we don't agree on much, but we can both agree with Larry Lucchino that the Yankees are the evil empire. So we'll leave it at that. Good luck to your Bruins and your Celtics. At least the Wizards and the Capitals are playing along this year, and we'll see how far my Caps can go. Sorry I didn't make it to Boston, but, down the line, if the Bruins win a couple of series, maybe we'll get an Ovechkin Bruins matchup up there, and I'll get to come up there and enjoy the North End and all that good stuff. Great to have you on, as always, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Nestor, thanks for having me anytime. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it. He is Lynchy up in Boston. They love him up there. 35 years at Channel 5 at WCVB, and you can follow him at Lynchy WCVB out on Twitter for all things Boston-related sports. Orioles in Fenway for a short trip, then off to Toronto this weekend. I'm off to Toronto next week. The Caps taking on the Maple Leafs. Of course, the Wizards starting the playoffs next week as well. The Ravens on the clock at 16, and we're going to be doing tons of draft coverage around here. And anything you missed, you can find in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. every morning. That is brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. There's one right around the corner from you. You can learn more and get some inspiration at Planet of Triumphs as well. Last but never least, any breaking news happens first on our WNST tech service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST, and plenty to talk about there as well. And I'll join Dennis on Thursday this week as well. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am a very available individual, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live, as well as our WNSTV YouTube channel. And we have our London trip on sale. Now we're waiting on the Ravens schedule to come out. We think it's going to happen next week. We are playing in Green Bay, in Nashville, in Minneapolis, and the Raiders, which could be Vegas. Could be Albuquerque for all I know, but we're assuming it's going to be Oakland because that's what they keep telling me. I'll believe that when I see it, by the way. But all those are up at the Road Trips tab, and you get $100 off if you've ever been on a WNST road trip. Just email me for that special deal, nasty@WNST.net. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.